I think I found the thing that is gonna help us all. I recently discovered a really great podcast that I think you're gonna love. It's called Sports Will Save Us All with Sasha Graham. And even if you're not super into sports, you will love this show. Sasha talks to plenty of athletes and coaches about their experiences, but she also talks to people you might not expect: dancers, reporters, cheerleaders, athletes with disabilities, sports psychiatrists, authors, filmmakers. Every week, it's a new and fascinating conversation that I think you're really going to enjoy. I think a lot of people are looking for non-political, non-controversial content right now to help sort of protect their mental health, and this podcast is a great distraction from all of that. You can find Sports Will Save Us All wherever you're listening to this podcast, or click the deals link in the show notes. Take a listen, let me know what you think. This week's episode is about a wild claim made by Lucille Ball. It seems too strange to be true, and, well, we'll find out on a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True. Well, hey there. Welcome to The Internet Says It's True, where every week we learn something that sounds made up but is really true. Part of the WCBE podcast experience. It's available on all podcast platforms as well as the NPR app and website. My name's Michael Kent. This is episode 213. Thank you so much for being here and for tuning in every week. We've got a ton of new listeners this week that are coming over and finding us from TikTok. Thank you so much to all of you for giving us a shot. While you're here, you should know that there is an online community for listeners of this podcast. They're called Tiziters. Tizit is an acronym for the name of the show. The Internet Says It's True. If you want to become a Tiziter, you can join at any level. It's patreon.com/Michael Kent. When you do that, you'll get access to the videos of the guests being on the show, plus ad-free episodes, and the best part, stickers. Tiziters also get a discount code for any merch they might want. We've got t-shirts and mugs available. It's really the best way to support this podcast. Once again, go to patreon.com/Michael Kent and sign up today. Right, Bernie?
I am once again asking for your financial support.
That's right. Also, a quick note about reviews. They're always greatly appreciated. You have no idea how much they help. Just go to the Apple Podcasts app. That's the purple icon app. For some reason, the reviews there are the only ones that seem to make a difference. Give us a 5-star rating, and then your review can just be a few words. They don't even have to make sense, but it helps the algorithm a ton when there's words and not just a rating. So that would be super helpful to spread the word about what we are doing here.
I was thinking of giving this place 5 stars.
Today's episode format is going to be a little bit different than normal. That's because the claim being made is somewhat wild, and there's been a lot of difficulty proving whether it's true or not. And I've had this happen a few times where I get into the research for the story of the episode, and then I learn that it can't be proven or it's been completely debunked, and I have to scrap the episode. In fact, I care so much about the validity of facts on this podcast that I'm currently working on a follow-up episode with some corrections to last week's story about the USS Constitution. But for this one, it hasn't been debunked. It's just tough to prove. But the topic is so interesting and so insane that I'm keeping it, and I'm telling the story with the disclaimer that there's been little proof. Here's the claim straight out of Lucille Ball's mouth on the Dick Cavett show.
I had some dental work to be done. You know, they put in temporary fillings. Mm-hmm. And I had never had it done before. What is it, lead?
I think in those days they were putting in temporary lead fillings.
Yeah. It was quite a while ago.
During the war?
Yeah. And
World War II?
Yes. And I had several, upper and lower. And I went to work that day, and I got home very late. And it was, I don't remember what year, but it was after they had taken the Japanese out of California and unfortunately put them in the camps, which was a very sad time in California. And we were all on our guard, you know, about many things. There had been a Japanese submarine sighted in Santa Barbara, and a Japanese fighter plane had been sighted going over our home one evening. It was touchy times. Anyway, this particular night was about 1:15, and I was driving alone. I had 35 miles to drive, and it wasn't any fun. It was just a normal night. I wasn't frightened or anything. I was just driving along, and a road that I'd taken many times, and all of a sudden, I heard music. But I mean, with a great beat, you know, and I looked down to turn off my radio, and it wasn't on. And I turned around and looked to see if there's anyone behind me. And the music was getting louder and louder and louder, and I realized it was in my mouth. And it was beating in my ears. I could hear the tune and everything. I recognized the tune. And then it started to fade out.
Yeah.
And I thought, what the hell was that, you know? What could it possibly be? And I didn't know what it was. So the next day I mentioned it at the studio to Buster Keaton. And he said, what street were you on, Moore Park? And I said, yes. He said, you went by the radio station. You picked it up. Well, you got any fillings? I said, yes. He said, you picked it up in your teeth. Well, I could hardly wait to go by there again. And I didn't go by at the same time of night, so nothing happened. There was no music playing, but I could hardly wait.
Call in a request.
Right. But about 5 nights later, because I had to wait, I don't know, a couple weeks for those teeth that we were getting fixed. I was going up another street, almost home, and I was passing 4 vacant lots that were all raised so they could build the Birmingham Hospital. And as I went by there, I heard, and I'm picking it up with my teeth.
You mean?
Yes. And I stopped the car. Then I looked around, in the Morse code, like. And I backed the car up, and it got stronger and stronger, and I kept on backing it up until it really got strong, and my whole jaw was vibrating, like this. And then I got the hell out of there. I went boom, like this, because it was very late. And I couldn't wait to get back to MGM the next morning and tell the security office, and they found an underground Japanese transmitting radio station. Honest to God.
Is that a great story?
That was Lucille Ball on the Dick Cavett Show. It aired March 7th, 1974. And as she described, she's talking about something that happened decades before in 1942. And as sad as it is, it strikes me that some of my listeners aren't familiar with Lucille Ball. So just briefly, Lucille Ball was an iconic American actress, comedian, and producer. Best known for her groundbreaking role on the 1950s sitcom I Love Lucy. This was the first interracial couple shown on television. She captivated audiences with her unparalleled comedic timing and endearing personality. As one of the first women to head her own major production company, Desilu Productions, she played a pivotal role in shaping the whole TV industry and championed innovative programming, including the development of Star Trek, the Andy Griffith Show, and many more. Her legacy endures as this trailblazer for women in entertainment, embodying American resilience, creativity, and humor. So, from a Hollywood heavyweight like Lucille Ball, a story like the one she told Dick Cavett really gained a lot of attention and has been told in Hollywood ever since. And there are 2 pieces to this claim, really, right? Every source I found who has tried to find the validity of the story has broken it down this way. Claim 1, can a human pick up radio waves with fillings in their teeth? And claim 2, did this lead to the discovery of a Japanese spy ring in America? So first we'll talk about the idea of fillings somehow catching radio waves out of the air. Starting sometime in the 19th century, metal was starting to be used to fill cavities in teeth. But early on, it was just any metal they could get their hands on, so it wasn't unusual to see fillings made of tin, silver, gold, or lead. Then in the 1920s and 30s, dental amalgam started to be used, and this was a combination of copper, tin, silver, and mercury. While dental amalgam is still being used in America today, many dentists now use porcelain composite material instead. So Lucy's filling would have been amalgam or lead. She did mention that they were temporary fillings. And the idea of metal fillings picking up radio stations is actually a pretty common story. I grew up in a time when all fillings were metal fillings, and I definitely heard about this concept. But that could be just from television and movies. It was sort of a trope in the 70s and 80s that was used as a plot point in sitcoms and movies. One of the earliest was a similar concept on an episode of The Partridge Family. It was the first season, episode 16, called Old Scrap Mouth. Lori gets braces and starts hearing things. Fun fact about this episode, it features a young Mark Hamill.
Wait a minute, hold it. Lori, this is a 2-4 count. I know, but my mouth is playing 3/4.
That doesn't make any sense.
I know you're not going to believe this, but I can hear music in my mouth.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I found a girl who has a mouth for music.
Laurie, what kind of a story is that?
I don't know. I can hear music in my mouth. I think it's the Rolling Stones.
Lori, I'm on your side, but the Rolling Stones don't make personal appearances in a person's mouth.
Honey, you did agree to do this, remember?
I did agree and I want to do it. I'm not making it up. You don't believe me, do you?
Excuse me. This could be the piebald syndrome.
No, I'm sure it's the Rolling Stones.
The piebald syndrome is when the metal in your mouth collects radio signals.
You're kidding.
No, not at all. It happens quite often, but usually with fillings.
So that was the family dentist on the show explaining that Lori was picking up radio signals from what he called the piebald syndrome, which is a real syndrome but has nothing to do with this. I feel like it's just a word they decided to use and they ran with it. And back when this aired in January of 1971, it's not like people were going to fact check it. There's also an episode of Gilligan's Island. I personally remember this episode with the mouth radio trope.
Professor, I don't see how a smack in the jaw could turn him into a radio.
Well, he's not a radio, Skipper. He's merely a simple form of receiver. You see, the high-frequency sound waves are emanating from the molar, which is pushed against...
Never mind all the technicalities, Professor. The thing I'm getting at is I've been belted many times before, but the only thing that ever came out of my mouth was a loose tooth.
While the idea of picking up radio signals with metal braces or fillings is rare, it's possible. Without getting too much into details, here's what would happen. When a radio signal is transmitted through the air, the information is coded in one of two ways. Either the space between the hills and valleys of the waves are changing, which is called frequency modulation, or the actual height of the waves are changing, which is called amplitude modulation. And we know those as FM or AM. Once they're sent out, to hear them, you need a detector of some sort and a speaker. The detector would have to be a rectifier, which in radio is something that takes those modulations and converts them into the information that was originally sent, which is sound patterns. Then that information is amplified by the speaker so we can hear it. In the case of braces or fillings, they would have to be acting as the rectifier or detector. So in theory, it's possible, and apparently would only be possible with amplitude modulation or AM radio signals. But does that actually happen? Well, Adam and Jamie on Mythbusters tested out the theory on Season 1, Episode 7. This aired in 2003. The episode, if you want to check it out, it's called Penny Drop, which is about the idea that if you drop a penny off a tall building, it could kill someone. But the third myth that they address in this episode is this one. They actually play the audio that I played for you from Lucille Ball on the Dick Cavett show, and they actually bust this myth.
Adam, is the myth true or false?
I think definitively we've shown that two different types of fillings do not act as a rudimentary radio crystal, and that there is some potential voltage or battery action occurring if you've eaten a lot of acidic food and you do have different types of metals in your mouth.
It's busted.
Okay, we'll call it busted.
All right.
So in that episode, and I encourage you to go and watch it because they really do treat it with a lot of respect and they treat it well. In that episode, they attempt the idea and it doesn't work, so they considered the myth busted. They concluded that a galvanic cell reaction between two teeth fillings and saliva could have resembled Morse code but wasn't radio. But does that mean it's not possible? I personally don't think so. Mythbusters is a great TV show, but sometimes their methods aren't the most scientific, mostly because this is a TV show and they have to make it interesting. And one of the things that convinces me that it's possible and the myth is not busted is because there are actually tons and tons of anecdotal and even some that are peer-reviewed and scientifically sound studies telling stories about this actually happening. There's a piece by R.A. Boza and S.B. Liggett from 1981 called Pseudo-Hallucinations, Radio Reception Through Shrapnel Fragments. And they found that a combat veteran who had shrapnel in his head was, in fact, able to hear AM radio signals that were being transmitted, and he was able to hear those due to the metal that was in his head. And in another case, and this one was 1961, a 12-year-old boy in Chicago had a missing front tooth replaced with a cap held in place with a brass wire, and he was able to hear radio stations in his mouth. This went away when the dentist removed the brass wire. There are a handful of these professionally recorded anecdotes, and if you look for this on the internet, you'll find hundreds more, people claiming that it happened to them. A professor at the Geophysical Institute at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, Robert Hunsucker, says it can actually happen. He says, quote, "A radio receiver is made up of an antenna, a detector to convert the radio wave to an audio signal, and a transducer, which is anything that acts like a speaker. In very rare cases, a person's mouth can act as the receiver and their body acts as the antenna. A metallic filling can act as a semiconductor that detects the audio signal, and the speaker would be something in the mouth that vibrates enough to produce noise like bridge work or a possible loose filling. End of quote. Bill Gade is a regulatory affairs officer for Radio Amateurs of Canada, an organization of radio enthusiasts based in Ottawa. And Gade says, quote, "Consider the humble crystal radio. It has no batteries, but it can pick up radio signals through a grounded wire antenna. To put it simply, it works by electricity being able to flow through the radio in one direction and not the other. The same one-way flow can make your braces or a filling vibrate in sync with music on the radio. If the signal is good enough, you can clearly hear the song," end quote. And this was documented in the 1970s by a student at Carleton University, where there was apparently a girl who got 580 CFRA radio, that's the station, on her braces. The accounts there are that it came in so clearly that bystanders could play Name That Tune. Okay, that's, again, anecdotal evidence. Here's another one. John M. Beggs, who is a physics professor at IU, Indiana University. He says all you need is an antenna, something to pick up radiation in the air. Even tiny scraps of metal can get the job done. When the metal makes contact with water, such as the saliva in your mouth, a miniature semiconductor is born. Now he says all you need is a speaker. Audio speakers generate quick vibrations, correlating the sound waves of a song on a radio signal. Beggs proposes that as Lucille Ball was driving down a bumpy road, the speed of her car might have been just enough to create vibrations from the loose fillings in her mouth. Her mouth echoed the sound, and voila, music in her head. So there's definitely, seemingly, a fair amount of experts that say it's possible. There's a large amount of anecdotal evidence throughout the internet. But that's just the first part of the story. The second part has to do with whether or not Lucy's fillings picked up an underground Japanese spy ring. We'll examine that after a quick break. If you love listening to this podcast every week and you want to show your support, that would mean a great deal to me. You can do that by becoming a Patreon member. We've got members at all levels, whether you want to pledge $1 a month or $10 a month. Just think about the value that you receive from this show. And if you like the histories and the stories that you learn about or the jokes that you hear, and if you think that they're worth it, consider signing up. For that, you get every episode ad-free and a week early, access to bonuses like the unedited videos of the guest appearances, and 20% off all merchandise. You can sign up today at patreon.com/Michael Kent. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent. There was a time that humans used 100% organic products as healing balms and moisturizers for their skin. Well, I've partnered with an awesome company that wants to get back to those times. Fatco sells organic and responsibly made tallow-based skincare products. For centuries, humans used tallow in skin moisturizers and healing balms, but unfortunately, the topical application of these fats seemed to stop around the same time that animal fats stopped being considered part of a healthy diet. A lot of modern skincare products do more harm than good by stripping your skin of its natural oils. Let's change that. You can try them out now at fatco.com and get 15% off your order by using my promo code INTERNET. Go to theinternetsaysitstrue.com/deals for the link. In her story, Lucille Ball first mentioned that she heard music in her head, and through her friend and fellow actor Buster Keaton was able to figure out that she was driving by a 50,000-watt radio tower in LA's Coldwater Canyon. And apparently the part about that radio station being there was corroborated, but the meat of this story was whether or not this actually uncovered a Japanese spy ring. There were Japanese spy rings uncovered in Southern California during World War II. There's actually very well documented evidence of the Japanese having secret spy bases all over the world in the early 1940s. In 1941, secret Japanese spy rings were uncovered in Southern California and Tijuana, Mexico. And these stories can be found in newspapers at the time, but they're all pretty much prior to Pearl Harbor, which happened in December of that year. Here's one that I found in a newspaper. This is from July 28, 1941, and the headline reads, "Japanese Spy Ring in the USA." It says, quote, "Washington believes that a strong Japanese spy ring is operating on the west coast of USA. Picked G-men have been sent to Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle in the last 2 days to tighten up anti-sabotage and anti-espionage activity in those cities. 3 suspected Japanese ringleaders left hurriedly for Mexico City yesterday, and G-men who broke the Nazi spy ring so spectacularly a few weeks ago believe that a constant flow of information concerning airplane production and troop ship movements from a Japanese resident is being supplied to the Japanese consulate in Los Angeles. If the Pacific situation worsens, Mr. Roosevelt, who is going to get really tough, can be expected to expel Japanese consulate officials from the country, besides seizing the leaders of the alleged Japanese spy ring, end quote. Well, as we now know, the Pacific situation did worsen that December. And by February, Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9066, which sadly placed 120,000 Japanese Americans in internment camps. Anti-Japanese sentiment was high, as was paranoia, which could be expected given the attack on Pearl Harbor and several other instances, including a Japanese submarine being discovered off the coast of Santa Barbara. But when Lucille Ball tells the story, she mentions that it happened when she was working on the film Dewberry Was a Lady, which was shot in 1942, after Japanese internment and after the U.S. cracked down on any Japanese operations happening in the U.S. And there don't seem to be any reports of these types of spy rings being discovered in 1942. There's also the fact this story popped up 32 years after it allegedly happened. So was it a case of conflation of myths at the time, like public hysteria and fears about the Japanese? Well, we do know that Lucy told at least one other person when it happened, because that person was Ethel Merman, who wrote it into the musical Something for the Boys the next year in 1943. In that musical, a female defense plant worker picks up radio signals with the fillings in her teeth. The last piece of the puzzle concerns the FBI. Because of FOIA requests, we can read that the FBI had an extensive file on Lucille Ball. I was actually able to read some of these in person at the FDR Library in New York when I visited recently, but you can actually read the entire file online. Some of it's redacted, but most of it's there in black and white. The reason they had a file on Ball is because of McCarthyism and the communist scare of the 1950s. Apparently, Lucille Ball had registered as a communist for the elections of 1936 and 1938. This, combined with a lot of her dealing with Hollywood groups, put her on the list of people to watch. In those days, many Hollywood activities were being linked with communism by the House Un-American Activities Committee. The files are super interesting to read. Lucy was never charged with anything because she explained to Congress and to the FBI that she only registered as a communist to appease her socialist grandfather and that she never actually partook in any activities of the party. The important part here is that there's nothing in her file, nothing unredacted anyway, that talks about her involvement in uncovering an underground spy ring. It seems like if this were the case, the FBI would have definitely had their nose in it and would have reported it in this file. So this seems to be an argument against the story being true. And here's my problem. I usually end these stories by saying the internet says it's true, and I just can't do that for this one. And you can probably see now why this is a different type of episode. Normally I need stories that are 100% confirmed true, but this was just such a fun story and I just couldn't trash it. I wanted to share it with you. It's such a cool Hollywood tale. All the components are there, but we just can't be sure that it's 100% true. So here's how we'll get around that. The story is this. Lucille Ball told a story that she was able to uncover an underground Japanese spy ring through hearing their transmissions in the filling in her teeth. The internet and Lucille Ball say that's true. It's time for Yap Yap with me and a friend. Today, I am calling the guys from the Try This at Home podcast, which is a rewatch Mythbusters podcast. I was on their show a couple weeks ago, and Cliff and Harrison are great podcasters. I actually listened to another one of their episodes today. They go through every episode of Mythbusters and break down the various myths inside. What's going on, gentlemen?
How's it going, man? Thanks for having us.
Hello. Absolutely. It's so cool to have you on. I was on your show because we talked about the Titanic, and it was an episode of Mythbusters in which they tested the myth or the idea that when a ship sinks, that you get sucked down in it. And this brought in the episode I did about Charles Lightoller, who was the second in command dude on the Titanic, and that whole kind of worked in. You should go listen to that episode on the Try This at Home podcast. But what are you guys working on now? What's the next one up?
So we are between seasons right now and getting to air some really special episodes. We spent our whole first season going through the show and kind of getting well versed in the world of Mythbusters because it's a 20-year-old show, so it's been a while since we've seen it. And now that we're between seasons, we've actually gotten to go back and talk to some people from the show. So we just put up an interview with Dr. Heather Joseph Witham, who is the folklorist on Mythbusters. She is the coolest person, and that was a great chat. And then actually, we'll announce here, we have a couple of episodes coming up. One is an interview with the narrator, Robert Lee.
Oh, that's awesome.
That'll be airing in a couple of weeks. And we just secured an interview with Adam Savage.
Oh, we are announcing it.
Amazing.
Yes.
That's huge.
So,
Harrison,
we
you're the
get
first
the man himself.
Harrison, are you hearing about when Cliff said that just now?
This is the first time.
That's amazing.
We're doing what? When?
That's incredible. I love it. I love it. Breaking news here on the internet says it's true. Well, before we get into this episode, I've been doing this new segment where I ask my guests to give me a fact that they think maybe I haven't heard about, and then I just use the honor system as to whether or not I've heard about it. And I asked you to each come up with one for this one. So we'll start with you, Cliff. Do you have something that maybe I haven't heard?
I do. I hope you haven't heard this. It was news to me when I stumbled on it recently. Do you know offhand what the easternmost state in the United States is?
I would get. Now, are we talking about like from the 50 states? We're not talking about territories?
Yes, 50 states.
I would guess Maine, but I'm not sure that that's true. It's either Maine or Florida, I would assume.
I thought the same. Believe it or not, it is Alaska.
Well, no.
Wait, what?
There is a piece of Alaska that actually crosses over the eastern date line. And into the eastern hemisphere. So technically speaking, I know this technically true is the worst kind of true. However, technically, the easternmost state in the United States is Alaska.
Interesting. Also the westernmost.
Exactly. At the same time.
I hate that. That breaks my brain.
Right?
Yeah.
The polls are weird.
It's exactly the kind of fact to bust out at a party if you don't want anyone speaking to you. It's great.
Those are my favorite kind.
Now, I know that Antarctica is the southernmost continent, but if that is an ice wall and not a country, what do we make of Iceland? Does it exist? Is it a real thing?
I've long said no.
Really?
Iceland? Are you kidding me? That sounds made up.
It sounds like it's from
name for a country.
It absolutely does. It's not Iceland. No people there.
And there's the old Iceland-Greenland thing where they should be swapped. Somebody got that wrong originally.
I've seen a globe.
I thought you were going to say you've been there, but no. I've seen a globe. There was one in my classroom growing up, and I know Iceland.
And I know what green. I know what green.
That's good. Harrison, hello.
Hi. I maybe you do know this one.
Okay.
Who do you know Donald Duck's middle name?
Donald Jessica Duck. No,
You're
I don't.
So close.
I don't know it.
You're so incredibly close. It's Fauntleroy.
Fauntleroy. I feel like I've heard that. You know what?
That's so good.
We got two winners, but I didn't know either of those.
Donald Fauntleroy. Donald Fauntleroy Duck, which we learn from a short cartoon in which he is drafted into World War II.
So because of
the
American
first
propaganda.
episode, yeah,
cartoons used to be real weird.
Yeah, but you see it on his documents. They never actually say it. It's just on his documents very briefly before they stamp it. Okay.
Wow.
Which I hope is how people actually get into the military. They stamp you okay or not a chance.
No, okay. Did you happen to look into where that name came from? Is there any sort of etymology to that, or
not at all?
There's an episode, probably not an episode, maybe a TikTok video, maybe just a short form. That's a good trivia question, man. Great one. All right, well, we got two for two there with those, but this is the first real question, and we're gonna play for a joke. So if you get it wrong, you've each got to tell me a joke, and if you get it right, I will tell you a joke. Here is the question, and if you get this wrong, I'm just gonna disconnect you both because there's no reason you should get this wrong. You'll understand why in a second. Lucille Ball famously claimed that her dental fillings did which one of these things? A, uncovered an underground Japanese spy ring. B, picked up alien signals, or C, gave her advice on stock trading?
I want it to be B.
I love that they're all equally ridiculous.
They are all equally ridiculous.
And that the most ridiculous one is, at least what I think is the most ridiculous one is true.
It is.
I think so too.
She believed that her radio fillings picked up a signal from a Japanese underground radio station.
You are correct. That is the correct answer. It is a uncovered an underground Japanese spy ring. I would love it, if they picked up alien signals. First of all, can we just talk about how Congress this week had an entire hearing where they're like, yep, aliens are true, and nobody cares. No one's talking about it because they hit it so close after the election that everyone's still freaking out about that and not about aliens.
Yeah.
And also, they won't
they've
show
done
us
that a
pictures.
couple of times.
We can do both. I see no reason why we can't freak out about both, honestly.
I can add it into my general panic that I'm feeling in my life. It's
both
fine.
are equally threatening to my continued existence.
Exactly. What's one more? You know? Sure, bring on the aliens.
Island
Honestly, if they showed us pictures or like new pictures or unpixelated video or something, like that might make the world come together a little bit more. It might be like, remember after 9/11 when we all waved flags? You know, we might be able to get together and Independence Day ourselves against an alien race and unite the country.
I think the only move now is to genetically engineer a giant octopus, drop it in the middle of New York, and then combine everybody into one world peace. It'll work.
This is a great
I don't see why not.
It was kind of like in the middle of the pandemic when one day it was like, oh, there's murder hornets now. Great. What's that? Just add that on the pile. That sounds fine.
I don't know what it is, but we're going to tackle it together in these trying times. I owe you a joke. What did the yellow tooth not find? Oh, sorry. I said it wrong. Why did the yellow tooth not find the white tooth's jokes funny?
I don't know.
They were too clean?
Because he was already dead inside.
Oh, wow.
I really like this joke for multiple reasons.
That's a really good joke.
I like that it sounds like a racist joke about teeth. And then it ends in like this truism of like, I'm going to try to remember that one. Normally the jokes on my first question are horrible. That one I'm going to remember. Why did the yellow tooth not find the white tooth's jokes funny? Because he was already dead inside.
That's a good. The setup sounds like a dad joke, and to some degree, the punchline is, but it's also just got deeply dark undertones.
I just love the idea that I'm like imagining different colors of teeth like being prejudice against each other.
I was gonna say, like,
I just don't think he's funny. I just don't. Right?
If the purpose of art is empathy, this joke has made me feel for a tooth. I mean, like, that is some deep art. That's real storytelling.
He can't feel for himself.
I just want to take a minute and tell my listeners, you can tell from their podcast is really good and it's super funny. You should listen. Let's move on. Question 2. For this next question, we're going to play for ad space on each other's podcast. So if you get it wrong, you've got to run one of my ads. And if you get it right, I'll run one of yours on a future episode. Here's your question. Lucille Ball is actually her given name, but earlier in her career, for just a brief period, she went by which one of these pseudonyms? A, Lucy Starr, B, Diane Belmont, or C, Lucy Monroe?
Oh, man. So this is going to be embarrassing if I get this wrong, because my mom is a huge Lucille Ball fan. So I grew up in a house full of Lucille Ball memorabilia.
And unfortunately, that's now on record because of our episode. People know.
Yes.
Actually, you know what? We didn't mention that. Going back a moment, when I said you should get this one right, it is because there was an entire episode of Mythbusters about this story, about Lucille Ball and the fillings and the Japanese spy ring. And while you guys are early on in covering Mythbusters, it was an early episode. And so you've already talked about, there is an episode of you talking about this myth. So that's why I was saying, I hope that you didn't already forget it.
And an entire episode of Mythbusters where they go into the science of would that work, which is fascinating in its own right, because it's a ridiculous story, but why it's ridiculous is actually even more interesting. Right. So I really recommend folks check out that episode, because that it is one of our favorites from the first season, because anything with Lucille Ball is going to be great to begin with, and it's a particularly good one.
I am familiar, but I don't know well, so I'm going to guess A.
A, Lucy Starr?
That's my guess.
B was Diane Belmont and C was Lucy Monroe. What do you think, Cliff?
Ooh, Lucy Monroe is standing out to me, and I don't know why, so I'm just going to say that.
Okay, so we have A and we have C. I don't know what to do with when one of you is right and the other isn't on this show, but unfortunately I don't have to worry about that because you're both wrong. The answer is Diane Belmont.
Wow.
That was.
Oh, you got me with the double Lucy's. That was Trixie.
Very good.
Yeah. So back when she was a model, Lucy wanted to change it up for a little bit. So for a short period of time, she went by the name Diane Belmont. She said that she was driving in Long Island and she saw the Belmont racetrack. And for Diane, she just said she loved the name Diane. So she wanted to be Diane Belmont. And Lucille Ball is actually her real name. That's what she was given at birth.
How amazing is that her birth name is better than any stage name she could have chosen?
Yeah, and I was trying to think about that. Is that just us knowing Lucille Ball, like knowing that name already, and it's so iconic, she's so iconic, so that we think the name is cooler than it is? You know what I mean? Like, maybe we wouldn't think, like Google, we don't think twice about the word Google anymore, right? But Google was a weird word when it first came out. So
it's just kind of become part of the cultural milieu.
Yeah, it's just in the atmosphere now. It's hard to separate from it. That's a good point. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly better than Diane Belmont.
I mean,
that one.
No, she was right to change it back.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what if Diane Belmont created Star Trek? Like, what would you do? You know, that's
right.
Okay. So for question 3, did we do our terms for that one? So you guys got it wrong. So I will send you an ad to play on the
Please
next
do.
episode of Try This at Home. And
absolutely happy to do it.
No, the Adam one.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait.
Well played, sir.
I'm gonna wait.
Well
I'm gonna
played.
wait for Adam Savage. For this, there's no way you're getting Jamie Heineman. By the way,
we're trying.
That is the white whale of Mythbusters. Is one James Heineman.
Truly.
I assume he lives in like a fortress in the woods, like a compound or something.
Oh, finding him will be most of the fun.
Yeah, they
That'd
did.
actually be a great documentary. Finding Jamie Heineman.
At the very end of our
Finding
season,
Heineman.
we did an episode where they went to Jamie's house, and now this was his house 20 years ago, so I doubt it's the same house now. But we were so expecting that it would be that, like it would be some sort of like cool robot lab or something, and they're just in like a normal junky basement, and it was weirdly disappointing.
But come on, you're burying the lead a little.
Oh, the fact that it was full of spiders.
They went to that location to collect spiders.
This is true.
So there was at least a conversation where they were like, where in the world can we get the most spiders to be had? Jamie Heineman's basement.
They find 40, I think.
That's amazing. Well, we already know that his parents' house apparently has skulls, because in this episode of Mythbusters, to test the myth, they need a skull. And you guys talked about this on your podcast. I won't get into it too much. You should go listen to their podcast on this episode and watch the episode. But at one point, he's just very casually like, I got this skull from my dad. And they never explain why, or like why his dad had a skull. But then the craziest part is that, I guess it was earlier in the episode that they had a different skull.
Yeah.
Was that
There's
a
a lot
fake
of
skull?
skulls.
Because they also test the idea of dropping a penny off a building and seeing if it can actually like kill someone.
Well, they spend a lot of time talking about how difficult it is to find a skull, and then later they just have a second one.
Yeah.
Which is kind of disturbing in its own way.
Which is crazy because they absolutely destroyed the first one with a bullet. Yeah. They shot it, and then they're like, oh, well, there goes that skull. And then after the episode was over, I was like, wait, did they ruin the dad's skull? I don't think so. I think what they did to the dad's skull was they had a dental guy, a dentist, I guess is what you call it, put fillings into a dead skull.
Yeah. So. They had to actually, because there's actually a montage on the show of them trying to not only find a skull, but find a skull with fillings.
Yeah.
Which is one of the creepiest things you can say on the telephone.
It's true. Especially not seeing you and just hearing the most monotone voice you've ever encountered. Like, what do you need? Hello, I require a one human skull, please. Fillings included.
It reminds me of when I had, so I have this like fake raw chicken that I use in my show. And it's supposed to look like a real chicken. The audience never knows it's fake, but it's, I travel with it because I don't want to ask for a chicken at every
time.
But when I asked the lady who made the fake food, I was like, hey, I need a realistic like 5-pound raw chicken. But in the context of the trick, there's an egg that comes out of it, a real egg, and then we crack the egg and blah, blah, blah. but I had to explain to her it needs to have like a hole in the back of it, like a cavity with like a flap of skin. Wait, let me explain what this is for. And I had to send her a video of the trick that I was working on because otherwise it was a very strange phone call. Very apropos of very akin to asking for a skull with fillings. So all right, so let's
possibly worse, man. I don't
maybe worse. Let's move on. Question number 3. For this question, we're going to play what we always play for, which is a sticker. This is a 3-inch square. Yes. The internet says it's true sticker. If you get the question right, you each get a sticker. Lucy's father died of typhoid fever when she was 3. Because of this, what did Lucille Ball avoid for the rest of her life? Was it A, funerals, B, pictures of birds, or C, sick people? This is a tough one.
That's a good one. I'd never even heard about her father.
I was really hoping for some kind of hint, like something where it's like, oh, I know that gives you typhoid fever, but all of them are equally like ridiculous in a way.
I mean, sick people would seem to be the obvious thing, which is why I'm leaning away from it.
Well, and also I feel like that's something that I would know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like Lucille Ball, she seems nice, but what's the case with sick people? You know, like I'm gonna go funerals.
What was B again?
B was pictures of birds.
Okay, no, that's the most ridiculous one.
I want to go B just because I want it to be true.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Well, the answer.
Okay.
Cliff got this one right. Pictures of birds.
The only Cliff gets a sticker. He gets to lord it over me.
So what is the link there?
Apparently, birds spread typhoid fever, or at least in Lucille's mind, they did. And she didn't mind being around, like if there are birds flying over, she didn't freak out, but she would not, could not look at pictures of birds and refused to stay in a hotel room if it had artwork of birds on the walls. That was apparently a big phobia of hers, was pictures of birds. She couldn't do it.
Her thinking that her teeth had found an underground Japanese radio station seeming less crazy now.
Fine.
In context. It's among the more mundane things she believed.
Yeah, I'm following. Now I'm following. All right, good to know. Good to know.
Absolutely. But the whole idea of Lucille Ball having any sort of psychosis was sort of brought up in the Mythbusters episode by her personal dentist who they had on the show, and said she was known to have tooth problems her whole life, but no psychosis, no hints of, and I mean, she was super sharp to do what she was able to do, especially from the production role. And she basically ran at that point. Was it Paramount or was it, I'm not sure what the studio was.
Yeah. Out of Desilu.
Yeah.
Their company. Yeah. She is amazing. I mean, just from you can probably speak to this even better than we can. Watching her on that episode as an entertainer, just watching her natural entertainment ability as a speaker is worldly. She's just off the charts.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was a well-rhythmed, I watched it a few times just today, and the way that she looks around as she's telling the story for the reaction from the audience and stuff, it's just a fantastic story. We actually played the whole thing at the top of this episode. So, it's just an incredible story, whether it's true or not. So the question 4 is we're going to have some fun with the stakes here. So we're going to play for an audio Easter egg. If you get it wrong, you'll have to insert this following phrase somewhere without context in a future episode of yours. If you get it right, I'll insert the same phrase somewhere in a future episode of mine. Here's your phrase.
Love this game.
Yeah. The phrase is, quote, "My mouth is playing the soundtrack from Armageddon." So...
Here's the thing. If we do lose this round, that is not entirely out of place on our show.
No. Now, flipping it into a conversation with Adam Savage may be a little bit harder.
I'm not requiring that, but it would be a really great thing. My mouth is playing the soundtrack from Armageddon is the phrase that you have to, with no context.
We know what's at stake
fair
now.
Saying, hey, we lost a bet, so we have to say this. None of that. It has to just work it in. The CDC says that 91% of Americans have at least one filling in their teeth. What percentage of Americans have 11 or more fillings? Is it A, 25%, B, 40%, or C, 10%? Okay, so these are people that have 11 or more fillings. It's either 25, 40, or 10% of Americans.
All of which higher than I would have thought.
Right.
Right off the jump.
Yes.
Oh, man.
I'm going 40.
Really?
Yeah. It's silly, but this is the silliest place ever imagined anywhere.
Yeah.
Like it just, we're well known for sugar. We pack it in everything.
This is true.
Okay.
I'm gonna go 40. I
Harrison
hate
says
it.
40.
I'm going to go 20. Similar logic,
25.
but just not going quite as far.
It's
25.
25, 40, or 10. Okay. Once
25.
again, Harrison loses. Cliff wins.
Oh!
It is 25.
So now Cliff has...
So that means that I don't know how this works now. I think we both have to say it. I think we both have to work it in a future episode. My mouth is playing the soundtrack from Armageddon. I will put it in since Cliff got it right, but you will put it in because Harrison got it wrong.
Same here.
That's fair.
That is
So
fair.
I have to say
you have to say it.
You have to
Okay,
say it.
all right. You know what? That's fair.
And by the way,
whoa, now hang on. 25% though is still alarmingly high.
It works out to 62.5 million Americans that have 11 or more fillings in their mouth. That's insane.
I think I'm clocking 4 myself.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what I have currently. I don't know.
Yeah, 1 or 2.
Yeah,
I have more than 1 or 2, but I don't think I have 11.
I
Although,
need to.
you know what? I might. I actually might.
Are you part of the 62 million?
I might be part of that 62 million. I remember going into my dentist once, and it had been like 2 years since I'd been to a dentist, and he said, "You've got." I'm pretty sure it was like 9 cavities all at once.
Wow.
And I decided. He said, "We can do a few today, and you can come back." I said, "Nope, do them all now." And I had I want to say it was like a 4-hour. A shout out to Tim, my dentist. I had like who was also a magician, by the way. It's not related, but
I made your teeth disappear. Yeah. No, you can't do that here.
Yeah. Congratulations. I made you one of 62 million people. So, all right. Well, you guys
get some kind of discount at that point, right? Like buying in bulk.
I don't know.
Costco dentistry.
Yeah.
Look,
dental
fees are 100% arbitrary and made up to begin with, so they could totally just say whatever they wanted it when I go to the checkout.
Totally.
It doesn't matter. None of them.
A zero disappears.
Yeah.
I have no idea how they price dental work. Every time it's different. I never know if they're taking my insurance or they're not taking my dental insurance. I don't know how it works, but I
once had the billing person at my dentist's office literally say, "Well, we're going to try sending it to your insurance. We'll let you know if it works." And I was like, "Is that your business model?"
Very comforting.
It is so chill about hundreds of dollars. I don't have that in my career. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, imagine like any other business doing that. It's nuts. Well, you guys have done well, and by you guys I mean Cliff. And
I mean it's what we all expected. Let's be real.
Harrison, you got question number 1 right. Cliff, you got question number 1, 3, and 4 right. And now we're up to question 5, which is for all the marbles. If you get this one right, it's as if you got all 5 questions right. That's basically how it works. It wipes the slate clean. I'll have an answer from each of you, but here's your question. If you had the ability to send a statement into the heads of everyone in America at once, like let's say everyone's got those fillings, at least 62 million of them. 91% of Americans, by the way, you can reach this way, and you have a radio signal that's strong enough to get to those fillings. What would you say? You get just a simple statement. We'll take Harrison first.
I'm gonna go with "You are not an American." Just really mess with them.
Ooh.
So
if every American
you're just throwing kerosene.
There's not
onto.
No, okay. I thought a lot about this.
I have so many questions right now. Okay.
I couldn't think up anything that was meaningful, so I decided to go with chaos.
Yeah, so basically, and when you say that, my brain goes to, okay, well, they don't know why they're hearing this.
Exactly.
So a bunch of people that now think they're schizophrenic, that they're questioning their nationality, and making everyone think, wait, am I like a Manchurian candidate type spy? What's happening?
Correct. With confirmation from the rest of the world that they did not receive the message.
Oh, wait, so you're sending multiple messages to different people? Or,
no. One simultaneous message only to Americans that they're not.
Oh, the rest of the world outside
the rest
of
of the
America.
world is like, what are you talking about? We received no such message.
That's
Wow.
amazing. That's amazing.
Wow.
Okay. I'm going to think about that one on a bit.
It would break.
Yeah.
Everything?
It would break me. if I got that message, you get game over.
Kidding.
Interesting. Okay. Or better yet, what if it just said like, you aren't who you think you are? Would that be enough?
That's really good.
I think that's better.
Yeah.
Because
that could be worldwide, and that could trip everybody up.
Absolutely, because they'd be like, am I adopted? Am I like, what does that mean?
Who is telling me that I'm not who I am?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Cliff. Wow. What do you think?
I didn't quite go with the chaos vector the way that
No. Yeah.
I was purely capitalist. I had two thoughts.
Plug the podcast.
But first, obviously, my first thought was listen to Try This at Home on Mythbusters Rewatch. That was obviously my first thought. But I don't know that people would really take that as a message from God. So
they might. God could be a listener. You don't know.
I got really focused on this idea that it's everybody at once. The timing is a big part of this. It's not just you're putting a vibe into the universe, right? It's all at once. So that's where I feel like the real thing, if you had that power and you were trying to use it one time to do something, is you like invest in a company or start a public company and you tell everyone in the world to buy stock in it at the same time to drive the stock price up.
Yeah. Interesting. Venmo $1 to Michael Kent.
There you go.
And then you have
join the Patreon.
A quick 300 million, whatever it is.
Would it be more concerning to you? Now I'm thinking yours might be more concerning a message than mine. Because if you receive mine, there's something supernatural probably at play. If I receive yours, I'm like, good Lord,
that means Apple figured out, or Elon Musk. Elon Musk figured out a way inside our brains. Yeah, that's true. That is a very different thing.
Surprised?
No, but like really, like beyond sad. You know, because just so many steps have been skipped to where you can directly advertise into my brain now. Like, that's game over.
It's very similar to when Apple put U2 on our iPhones without asking.
Yes, it's just like that.
It's the same
one
thing.
That every single one of us had.
Yeah,
I don't remember the name of the album.
You know, the classic,
the one that no one listened to because it was forced upon us.
That's all anyone knows about it.
Like, what if it was a good album? Like, what if they like?
Right?
Would
you don't know?
Would that have
Bono
gone...
doesn't even know.
Yeah, because they wrote the album like it doesn't matter if it's good. Everyone's going to listen to this.
It's like the highest selling, I guess you could call it, that album immediately. So what do we care? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, pretty liberal use of the word selling, but sure.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
A purchase was made
eventually.
That's amazing. Well, you guys, you both won that question. That is a correct answer from each one of you, as weird as those answers were, which means you are welcome back on the podcast anytime. I hope we can find another one like this where it does work with, an episode that you have done. Folks at home, you can listen to the Try This at Home podcast, the same place where you're listening to this podcast. They're on all the podcast platforms, including YouTube. Their most recent episode is actually a bonus episode where they already told you, they interview one of the cast members on the show, the historian, which we talked about how great she was on the episode that I was on. She has the ability to sort of just cut through the show and become very human. I don't know how to describe that other than how I just said it. It really adds a lot of like humanity to a show that features Adam and Jamie, who are a little bit larger than life and not as relatable as the historian. So it's well worth the listen. Go listen to the episode about the what was the name of it? Was the penny drop episode, I believe, or something like that?
It's the penny drop episode and radio tooth fillings is what they call the Lucille Ball myth. Pretty early on in the run, one of our first, I think, 6 episodes or so.
There you go. And also find it on Mythbusters as well. So thank you so much for joining me, guys. I really appreciate you having you here.
Oh, thanks so much for having us, man. It's always a blast, and it's been great to collaborate.
He already took the word blast, which I had in the chamber, so good to see you.
I love it. That's all for this week. Thank you so much to Cliff and Harrison of the Try This at Home podcast for being my guests, and thank you to you for listening. I recorded the following from inside my mouth.
Thank you for listening to The Internet Says It's True. To listen to episodes ad-free and a week early, support us on Patreon. You can do that at patreon.com/Michael Kent. If you learned something just now that you didn't already know, go to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review with 5 stars and a few words. That helps us a ton, because that's how the algorithm works. I don't know what an algorithm is, but just do it. See you next week for a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True!
The Internet Says It's True would like to thank the Patreon subscribers whose monthly contributions help to make this show possible. Sean Brown, Joshua Endres, Dallas Ray, Bryce Swanson, Eugene Anderson, Jim and Joanne Martin, Mitch and Andrew Joseph Kemplin, and the show's official emperor, Kick Track. The show is written and produced by me, Michael Kent. The theme song is by Finite Music Forge, and all audio clips in this episode are used for education and commentary and used under Fair Use Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107. You can listen to past episodes by searching for The Internet Says It's True wherever you get your podcasts, and you can see bonus content at patreon.com/Michael Kent.